You're welcome back. You're still watching Business Morning here on Channels Television. Now, according to the 2020 Oil and Gas Audit Report for Nigeria, the federal government earned $20 billion from the oil and gas sector in 2020, with 106 billion naira paid as subsidy between January and December 2020. The Executive Secretary of the Nigeria Extractive Industries Transparency Initiative, Dr. Bunaya Oji, as we heard him earlier, explained that oil thefts, crude losses came to about 15 billion naira, with 349 cases of vandalism recorded in the year 2020. In all, the report reveals that the financial flows from the oil and gas sector between 2011 and 2020 stood at $394 billion. Now, following up on this conversation, we have another woman on the show, Bolale Agbaje, analyst with financial derivatives. Hi, Bolale. Happy Women's Day.
Same to you.
Thank God we are everywhere, so we can talk to women on everything.
And empower women.
And empower women, too. Thank you so much. So, I mean, not a very good picture there when we see how much is spent on subsidy first, and then we now see how much we lose to thefts and vandalism, 15 billion naira lost.
So,
you know.
So that also has affected our ability to even benefit from the rising oil prices right now. We have the force majeures that happened recently, actually in January this year, and you also have the fact that, you know, the community issues are still there and are still lingering, and also the structural issues that we do have that are still, you know, making a situation where we cannot actually increase our production past this 1.2 that we've been in for a while now.
For a long time now. Even when the quota has been lifted, I think 1.8 now?
Yes, we can actually meet up with that. So many of all these, you know, oil contractors have been complaining about some of these issues and how they have to spend so much to kind of, you know, bring their production levels back to, you know, where it was before. And also maintenance as well actually eats into the cost of many of these oil producers, oil production companies rather. And also the fact that the government is not, well, we do expect that the government would actually spend over 4 trillion naira
on subsidy. I remember they asked for 3 trillion naira, and I kept saying that, I mean, with the surging prices, I mean, we're complaining then, but with the surging prices now of Brent and WTI, with what's going on in Russia, we can only expect that subsidy will be higher.
Exactly, and I think it's increased by about almost 100% at the moment.
Oh my word.
From what you had reported, it was about 109 billion naira. Now we're talking about 4 trillion naira. That's a ridiculous amount. So literally, most of these, you know, world agencies are expecting that Nigeria is obviously going to start borrowing again.
Borrowing again. We have not finished paying the ones that we had. I know last year we talked a lot about the debt stock and all that. And that's why the NATI Executive Director or Secretary, Mr. Oji, Bunaya Oji, is asking, I mean, we have to do something about the subsidy. We have to do something about it.
But at the moment now, anything, if we do not, you know, pay this subsidy payment, rather, it would more or less affect the Nigerians, the individuals within the country.
But how much are we buying petrol now? The last time I bought petrol last week was 200 naira for a litre.
Yeah, obviously.
Diesel is
545 naira, yes. But, you know, you obviously have most of these, you know, oil companies that would obviously try to take advantage of it. But the standard price is around 165 to about 167 naira per litre. But ideally, that shouldn't be what it should be if you look at the world prices at the moment. Oil price should currently be trading around, you know, 200 and above. But because of these subsidy payments that the government is trying to, you know, make into the market, it's not, you know, increasing prices.
Yeah, so people are saying that, I mean, if it was fully subsidized, we'll be paying 200 and above. Yes. And right now, some people are buying it 200 and above.
Yes.
So, I mean, why don't we just face the fact and move on?
But it will definitely affect, you know, individuals within the economy, businesses, commodity prices that we come here to talk about. It will definitely, you know, affect them in a negative way. And I think the government right now is trying to prevent that from happening. You don't want consumer confidence to be affected. You don't want, you know, to increase the demand, the pressure of, you know, businesses operating within the country. All of that is what, you know, they're trying to avoid in the short term, and more or less ease into these new prices as much as they can over the next few months.
So this diesel that is being sold at about 560 naira per litre now, what spillover effects is it having?
Well, you know, most of the trucks that are used to, you know, transport these commodities, you know, through across Nigeria, obviously rely on diesel. also the fact that, a lot of people rely on diesel for generating power. And we've had issues with our power generation for the past how many months now. So obviously that would feed into costs for both on the individual level and the business level as well.
Because factories and
they
manufacturers,
are heavily
they are diesel,
diesel. And I'm sure that's why, diesel price is not even wasting any time increasing its price, just because the demand is there. Demand pressure is there. And obviously now that we're having serious power issues, the demand has increased significantly, and most of these, people that actually import, this particular diesel want to benefit from that as well.
And of course, this is largely connected to what's going on in the global space.
Yes.
Russia oil is a very big conversation going on now. US saying they may go ahead and ban the import, and EU saying they cannot afford it, and now Russia threatening to turn off their gas. So all of this, of course, will also determine how much crude goes
and also,
for.
US, the gas prices in the US are at, record highs now. They've never, ever seen, this particular highs in the past 14 years. And it's something that we have to, understand. The fact that the US government is trying to make sure that they look for ways that they can actually increase the supply of oil into the market. I think that's why they're delaying with the Russian sanctions, because they're looking for who would actually, come in to offset.
I know somebody talked about Venezuela.
They had actually met with Venezuela actually yesterday evening, and they had, started talks about removing the sanctions that was imposed by the Trump administration.
And then the Iran ban too.
Yes, I'm sure they will definitely fast track that, although we haven't seen any talks about that recently, but it's something that I'm sure they would look into. They're currently talking about it. I actually saw a report from the press secretary talking about the fact that it's on the table. They're trying to evaluate what's best for the US individual, and that's, going forward, that's what, whatever is best for them and reduces the cost would be most likely what they would,
Do you see all of this pushing the world to embrace cleaner energy faster than the plan?
So yes, so there's the story of stagflation, a situation where you have high inflation, high unemployment, and most analysts are suggesting that the Eurozone is actually moving towards the stagflation era rather. And so what then happens is that some analysts have actually come out to explain that obviously we had seen this when we had the first oil price shock in 1970s. But at the same time, right now, it shouldn't be as bad as what we had seen then, just because people are adapting or adopting cleaner fuel. So the impact of this for oil price crisis or oil embargo that we're seeing around the countries shouldn't be as detrimental as we had seen in those previous, or well, we hope, because we're still actually heavily reliant on oil.
And global food prices is at its...
It's at its peak. It's at its peak right now, and we've seen the price of gold and so many other commodities increase significantly, especially the ones that Russia and Ukraine are, top producers of. That obviously is something that most, analysts already expected. The fact that Russia would more or less use this particular commodities as a weapon to, fight other countries that are going against what he's doing to Ukraine at the moment.
So what else is happening in the commodities space?
Yeah, so we're seeing the price of, right now, looking at what happens in Nigeria, the price of wheat that we're heavily reliant on has definitely increased significantly. And then we should see prices of, the byproducts of wheat, bread, and all sorts of other products increase as well. The price of bread, I think, currently is about 600 to 700 naira per loaf, and this is definitely going to increase further.
Wow.
And Nigeria bread is a major staple for most Nigerians.
It is, yes.
And also corn, when you're talking about animal feeds, that obviously translates to the price of cow, and also...
Remember the other time we talked about egg going for 80 naira for just one egg.
Yes, and obviously this comes from the chickens that...
but there's also the talks that even though, indirectly we still feel the impact, does Nigeria rely heavily on Russian wheat?
I wouldn't say heavily, but Russia is one of our top imports.
Where do we get? Where do we?
I'm sure we do get wheat, because US is also one of the top producers.
And
of
Canada,
wheat. And Canada as well. We do get from them, but obviously Russia is one of the major producers of wheat, and we'll definitely feel the heat,
of course,
from the loss in supply from Russia.
Yeah, so I think personally that there's so many lessons to learn. When you talk of commodities, you say, oh, Russia, they're one of the top producers. You talk of wheat, you talk of oil, you talk of gas. has. I think
Unfortunately for us, Russia is one of, the best when it comes to production of several commodities within the market space. But, at the moment, most of these countries like China are looking for ways to be less reliant on, some of these countries because of situations like this. Yes, especially, and it's sad to say because we had already moved towards globalization, and right now we're moving
and globalization makes you rely on each other.
Yes, exactly. And now we're talking about, trying to make ourselves independent from other countries to prevent situations like this, which is not so great. But I'm sure if the U.S. goes ahead to impose sanctions and maybe other countries follow suit, hopefully, we see a situation where the Russian economy backs down. But I'm not so sure about this because
well, for me, I think one major lesson from this is we have the potentials. Let's develop our potential. So I mean, to a large extent, we can be self-reliant. That's what Russia has done.
We need to build ourselves structurally. It's sad, talking about Nigeria is a very sad story because ideally the impact of this shouldn't be as much. Like Kenya, for example, they're talking about inflation coming down, and that's just because demand pressure from Kenya is not as much. How is it that in other countries we're talking about rising inflation, and then in Kenya you have inflation coming down just because they've been able to build themselves structurally and be less reliant on what activities of other countries.
We are relying on other countries for everything, even the things that we have, unfortunately. Well, our lessons to be learned, because a war in one country is a war for everybody.
Everybody, yes.
That's how it looks like. Well, thank you so much, Bolanle Agbaje, for analyzing these issues for us. And happy Women's Day once again. All right, we'll just take a moment. We'll be back to head to the markets.